Hello. In this lesson, I will teach you how to create a class in JavaScript EX6. So, first, in this code here, to create a class, you need to write the class keyword. So, class, it means that you want to create a class. Now, after that, every class needs to have a name. So it's a good practice create a class name with the first letter in uppercase in this way. So for instance, if I want to create the class people, I create in this way with the first letter in uppercase. If I want to create the the car class, I create in this way with the first letter in uppercase. It's a good practice because when you see a thing in this way, a word in this way with the first letter in uppercase, you can easily identify that is a class, right? So it's a good practice. So remember, every time that you will create a class, create this class name with the first letter in uppercase. So here I will create the person class. All right? So after that, every class needs to have properties. And to define properties of a class, we need to create a special class method called constructor. So here, inside your class, you will type constructor. And constructor is a special method of classes in JavaScript. And inside the constructor, you can define properties. So to define properties, you need to write that this keyword dot the name of the property that you want to create. So I want to create the name property and age property. So my class person has two properties, name and age. Remember, every time that you want to create a property, you need to first write this dot the name of the property, right? So it's really simple to define a class in JavaScript, all right? So the constructor is a special method that is executed when you create an object from this class, right? It is the first method that is executed when you create a new object from this class. Now, let's create a new object. How to create a new object? It's really simple. You just need to go here and create a new variable. I will call it of Victor. And this variable will receive this new person, all right? And in this way, you create a new object from this class. This thing here, this new person, means that you want to create a new object, a new copy of this class, right? So in this way, you create objects in JavaScript. Is really simple, all right? So a cool thing about objects and properties is that you can access properties of an object in this way here. I can type the variable that holds my object, in this case Victor, so Victor, and when I write here dot, I can access the properties of this object, for instance name. And I can make a console.log here. And let's see what happened. As you can see, we receive undefined. But why? Simple. It is because I don't pass any value to this property here, right? And to define a value to a property is simple. It's just like a variable. So here you can call your variable that holds your object dot the property name and equals to a value. For instance, Victor Lima. Now, when I make a console.log here, in this way, as you can see here, we get Victor Lima, which is the value of this name property here, all right? Well, now I can define a value to the age property. And I can make a console.log here. Just like a variable. And here our value, right? We can think that a property is like a variable inside an object, all right? So now that you know how to work with properties and classes and objects, let's take a look at how to create other objects. So it's really simple. So let's suppose here that I want to create a new object. So I just need to create a variable. I will call it of John, and it will receive a new person, a new object from the person class. Now I can define a name and an age for this object here. To do this is really simple. If I want to define a name to this John object here, I just want to call John.name and define name. I can define age, John.age, and I can make a console.log here, name, John name, for instance, and John age. And now, as you can see, we have John 30. Well, it's really cool. Now, as you can see, a class is like a mode of people in this case, that help us to create new people object in easy way in our script. But as we can see, this way to define object properties isn't very clean, all right? So to help us to create a clean code when we work with classes, we can define object properties values in the constructor. So remember, the constructor is the first method, the first function that is executed when you create a new object. So when you do this line here, new person, basically you execute your constructor. All right? So here in the class constructor, we can define parameters as a function. So I can define a name parameter and an age parameter. And now I can say that my this.name, my property name, receives the name parameter, and my property age receives the age parameter. Now, after do this, I can define my object properties in this way. Instead, I have these two lines of codes here. I can pass parameters to my object declaration here. So here, inside these parentheses, I can pass the name parameter and the age parameter. It's because I define in my constructor two parameters that I pass to my properties automatically when I create my object. All right, now when I run my code, as you can see, we have Victor 20. Really cool. We can make the same thing here to John. So here I can delete it and I can pass a name and an age. And when I reload my code, as you can see, we have John 30. Really, really cool. So now you know how to work with classes, properties, and constructors. All right. So now let's take a look at methods. As you saw in the past lesson, methods is like functions inside classes. We can say that methods is the same thing as objects actions. To create a method is very simple. It's like you create a function. You just need to go to your class, and here you need to define a name to your method. For instance, I will create a talk name, and after you define the name of your method, you need to open parentheses, and here. So it's like a function. It's almost the same thing of a function. And here you can implement the logic that you want, right? So here I can make a console.log, my first method. I can make another console.log, 2 plus 1, and whatever. Now that I create a method here in my class, I can access this method from my objects. So here in my Victor object, I can call it dot the method as a function. So we can say that a method is a function inside an object, right? And now when I reload, as you can see, my first method, 3. Amazing. So a method works in this way. Now, since a method is the almost same thing as a function of a function, you can define parameters in a method. So here I can define a parameter, for instance, word. And here I can make a console.log word. So my talk method receives a parameter. And now when I call this talk method, I can pass a parameter. For instance, I can pass a JavaScript is awesome. All right. I can call this method from my John object as well. So john.talk PHP is awesome as well. All right, so I have a method here. And now when I reload my browser, as you can see here, we have JavaScript is awesome and PHP is awesome as well. So our method executed with success, right? Well, methods can access object properties as well. So here, for instance, in this console.log here, I can do the following thing. Here, I can do this dot name plus space plus. Now, when I reload my code, as you can see, I have the name of the object that call this method. So here I call this method talk here from my Victor object. And here, after that, I call my talk method by this John object here, right? So that this keyword here refers to the object. So when I call this keyword, it's the same thing that I say, hey JavaScript, get the name of the object that call this talk method. So here, when I call this talk method from Victor, that this keyword here means get the name of the Victor object. The same thing for John object, right? So as you can see, methods can access objects properties as well, right? So it's really cool. And in this lesson, you learn how to work with the basics of classes in JavaScript. And I see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.